My parents cast me out for daring to stand up to their golden child sister. Years later, karma crushed their business dreams, and I flatly refused to save them. 10 years ago, my life basically got flipped upside down because my family, especially my sister Claire, decided to kick me out of the house. And why? Because they thought I was some sort of traitor for figuring out how to pay for my college tuition without their help. I was 18, just about to start college, and suddenly I found myself with nowhere to go. This all happened thanks to Claire, the golden child who always managed to make me look like I was, barely worth anything in comparison. Claire is 4 years older than me. From the time we were kids, it was clear that she was the favorite, not just a little bit, but completely. My parents were obsessed with her. If she got an A, they'd throw her a freaking parade. But if I got an A, it was like, oh, cool, what's for dinner? You get the idea. So I kind of grew up with the mentality that it didn't matter what I did because Claire would always outshine me. By the time she went off to a top business school, my parents were all over it like she was some sort of prodigy. They paid for everything, her tuition, her apartment, her fancy clothes. Meanwhile, I kept my head down and figured I'd have to do things on my own. When I got accepted into a reputable college in the UK to study history, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd get a little bit of support. But nope, that wasn't happening. My parents straight up told me they couldn't afford my tuition. Okay, I get it, college is expensive. But what really pissed me off was that they didn't even want to co-sign a loan. I wasn't asking them to pay the whole thing, just to help me out so I wouldn't be drowning in debt my whole life. They refused, and we fought about it a lot. Their reasoning? We already paid for Claire's college. We have to think about our future now. Oh, and they were also planning to start some kind of small business around that time, so apparently all their savings were going into that. I was completely stuck. I didn't want to lose the opportunity to go to this college. But it felt like my parents were just throwing obstacles in my way for no reason. They had no problem spending tons of money on Claire, but when it came to me, suddenly they had to be frugal and responsible. I needed help, and it became pretty obvious that they weren't going to give it to me. So with no other options, I turned to my Aunt Denise. Denise is my dad's older sister, and let me just say, she's the total opposite of my parents. She's a neurosurgeon and honestly way more successful than either of them, but she's also super down to earth. My parents always had this weird tension with her. They'd act all polite at family gatherings, but I could tell they were bitter about how successful she was compared to them. My dad, in particular, hated feeling like she overshadowed him. I didn't really want to get her involved at first, but I was desperate. I reached out to her one day, asking if she'd be willing to help me with the tuition. She didn't even hesitate. "Of course I'll help." "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" she said. But I was terrified that my dad would find out. If he knew I had gone behind his back to ask for money from his sister, he'd lose his mind. So I begged Denise to keep it a secret. Things were fine for a while after that. I figured I was in the clear. My tuition was covered, and I was getting ready to leave for school. That's when Claire decided to ruin everything. To this day, I still don't know exactly how she found out about me asking Aunt Denise for help, but she did. And being Claire, she couldn't just let it go. She had to blow it up into this huge dramatic thing. One night, I came home after hanging out with some friends, and immediately, I knew something was off. All my stuff was packed up in boxes. Everything, my clothes, my books, even my bedding. My parents were sitting in the living room, and Claire was standing there with this smug, self-satisfied look on her face. It felt like I had walked into some twisted intervention. My dad didn't waste any time. He threw a stack of papers at me and said, "Explain this." I had no idea what he was talking about, so I looked at the papers, and that's when I realized Claire had gone full psycho. She had fabricated fake emails between me and Aunt Denise, where it looked like I was betraying the family, leaking details about the business my parents were planning to start in exchange for Aunt Denise paying my tuition. I couldn't believe my eyes. Claire had gone through my laptop, found some real emails between me and Denise, and then doctored them using Photoshop or whatever. She made it look like I had sold out our family. I was stunned. I tried to explain that it was all fake, but my parents didn't even listen. They just stood there saying, "We trusted you, and you stabbed us in the back." It didn't matter what I said. They believed Claire because, of course they did. They always believed her. It was like I didn't even exist anymore. They told me to pack my things and leave right then and there. I was officially kicked out of the house because of a complete lie. I begged them to reconsider. I didn't want to be a burden on Aunt Denise, especially after she had already agreed to pay for my tuition. But my parents didn't care. They said I was a traitor, and they wanted nothing to do with me. So that was it. I left with nothing but the clothes on my back and a few boxes of my stuff, and I moved in with Aunt Denise. Honestly, I don't know how I would have survived if it weren't for her. She took me in without a second thought and treated me like actual family, something I hadn't felt in years. While my parents were busy worshiping Claire and focusing on their future business, Denise was the only one who really cared about me. And for that, I'll always be grateful. But to this day, I can't shake the memory of that night. Walking into my house and seeing all my stuff packed up, my parents staring at me like I was a criminal, and Claire standing there with that smug look on her face, knowing she had won. So there I was, kicked out of my own house, standing on Aunt Denise's doorstep with my life in boxes. I was still processing what the hell had just happened. It felt like a bad dream. I mean, how do you go from thinking you're part of a family to being homeless in one night? The whole thing was so surreal, but at the same time, I couldn't say I was that surprised. My parents had always made it clear that Claire came first, but I guess I never thought they'd take it this far. Denise, being the angel that she is, welcomed me with open arms. She didn't ask a million questions. She didn't pry. She just saw that I was hurting and told me that her house was my house for as long as I needed. That kind of kindness hit me right in the gut because I realized right then that I had never felt anything close to that from my own parents. So I moved in with her. It was strange at first, waking up in her guest room, looking around at a house that wasn't mine, but over time, it started to feel more like home than the place I grew up in ever had. We started getting closer, talking more about everything. Turns out, Aunt Denise knew a lot more about my parents and their bullshit than I ever realized. She'd been keeping her distance from them for years, only showing up to family events because she felt obligated. She told me something that blew my mind. Apparently, my dad's grudge against her started way before I was born. Denise had always been more successful. She went to med school, married a great guy who unfortunately passed away young, and was living her best life. Meanwhile, my dad was doing okay, but every time they met up, he'd get weirdly competitive. Denise said their relationship basically became a game of who could look better to the rest of the family. But instead of just being proud of his sister, he resented her. And it wasn't just career stuff. My dad felt overshadowed in every way. Financially, socially, everything. I guess that jealousy bled over into how he treated me. Denise had figured all this out years ago, but kept quiet because she didn't want to make things worse for me. Now that I was living with her, though, she told me everything. It was like she was trying to fill in all the gaps in my life that I hadn't been able to make sense of before. Why my parents never seemed to care about what I did. Why they always bent over backward for Claire. It all boiled down to some weird family dynamic I didn't even know existed. Living with Denise was great, but I couldn't completely relax. I kept waiting for my parents to call, for Claire to show up out of nowhere, or for them to apologize for what they did. But of course that never happened. Days turned into weeks, and nothing. Not a single text, not a single call. At first I was angry, really angry. How could they just toss me aside like I was nothing? Then the anger kind of faded, and I started to feel numb about the whole thing. It was like my brain was shutting off all my emotions just so I could function. Denise, though, she was amazing. She never pushed me to talk about what happened unless I wanted to. She let me take my time figuring things out. She even helped me get all my stuff sorted for school, making sure I had everything I needed before I left for the UK. I swear, if it weren't for her, I don't know how I would have gotten through that time. But even with her support, the silence from my parents was deafening. You'd think, after kicking your kid out, you'd at least check up on them, right? But no, I guess I shouldn't have expected anything different, yet I still did. One afternoon, about a month after the whole ordeal, I got a text from Claire. I remember it so clearly because it was just as obnoxious as she was. All it said was, "Hope you're doing okay. By the way, don't leave your laptop lying around." That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she had done, just a little smirk in text form reminding me that she was the one who got me thrown out. I stared at the screen, feeling my blood boil. She was taunting me, plain and simple. I didn't respond. What was the point? Claire wasn't the type to feel guilty about anything. In her mind, she had won some weird family game, and that was that. I thought about texting back something snarky, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. She'd just get off on it. So I blocked her number and tried to move on. It wasn't easy. Every time I looked at my phone, part of me was still waiting for something from my parents, maybe a message from my mom saying she regretted everything, or even a passive-aggressive email from my dad pretending like nothing happened. But nope, radio silence. In the months that followed, Denise and I got into a solid routine. She became more than just my aunt, she became my confidant, my friend, and basically the only family I had left. I started to see how messed up my parents really were. They'd spent so long focusing on Claire, trying to mold her into some perfect daughter, that they completely missed out on everything else. And when Claire finally messed up, which she eventually would, it would be too late for them to fix it. Around the time I was getting ready to leave for school, I got another message, this time from my dad. It was short and direct: good luck in the UK. That was it. No apology, no explanation, nothing. It felt like a slap in the face. After everything, all he had to say was good luck. I didn't even know how to respond, so I didn't. I just deleted the message and tried not to think about it. The day I left for the UK, Denise drove me to the airport. She hugged me and told me how proud she was, how she knew I'd do great things. It was the first time in my life that someone in my family had said those words to me, and it hit me harder than I expected. I got on that plane feeling like I was leaving more than just my home behind. I was leaving behind the part of me that had always tried to seek approval from my parents. From that moment on, I decided I didn't need them anymore. I had Denise, I had my future, and I had myself. If they wanted to reach out, fine. But I wasn't going to waste any more energy chasing after people who clearly didn't care about me. I was done. So life in the UK went great. I settled into college, made some friends, and for the first time in years, I wasn't constantly thinking about my family. I won't say I forgot about them. I don't think that's possible, but they definitely weren't on my mind as much anymore. I was focused on my studies, figuring out my future, and just trying to enjoy life without the drama that came with living under my parents' shadow. But of course, just when things were going smoothly, something had to come and mess it up. I finished college, came back to my city, and found a very good, high-paying job. And then I got a call from my mom. Yeah, my mom, the same woman who hadn't spoken to me since the day they kicked me out. It was totally unexpected. I was sitting in my apartment, no longer a dorm room, when my phone buzzed. I saw her name pop up, and for a second thought I was seeing things. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Should I answer it, ignore it? After everything that had happened, why would she be calling me now? I let it ring a few more times, and then, against my better judgment, I picked up. Hello, I said, trying to sound calm even though my heart was pounding. There was a pause on the other end, like she wasn't sure what to say. Finally, she spoke. Hi, it's your mother. No kidding. Who else would it be? I didn't say that, though. I just stayed quiet, waiting for her to explain why she was calling after almost 2 years of nothing. She hesitated again, and then out of nowhere she said, "We need to talk." I couldn't help but scoff. Now she wanted to talk. After everything. It was so typical of her. But even though I was annoyed, a part of me was curious. What could possibly be so important that she was reaching out after all this time? About what? I asked, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. Your father and I, we want to see you, she said, stumbling over her words like she was trying to figure out how to phrase it right. I could already tell where this was going. They didn't actually want to see me because they missed me or felt bad for kicking me out. There was something they needed, and I had a pretty good guess what it was. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Why? I asked bluntly. She didn't answer right away, which pretty much confirmed my suspicions. When she finally did speak, her voice was quieter, like she was trying to sound all motherly and concerned. Your dad and I. We've been going through a hard time. Things haven't been easy since the pandemic. There it was. The real reason behind the call. It was exactly what I thought. Money problems. I hadn't heard much about their business since I left, but I knew it wasn't doing well. Denise had mentioned in passing that their shop wasn't thriving the way they'd expected, and with the pandemic it made sense they'd be struggling. But I wasn't going to jump in and save them, not after everything they'd done to me. Okay. And? I said, my voice flat. I wasn't about to make this easy for her. Your sister Claire. She's been managing things for us, but she started, and that's when I cut her off. Let me guess, I said, already knowing where this was headed. Claire screwed it all up. There was a long pause on her end, which was answer enough. Of course Claire had messed it up. I don't know why they were surprised. She was always more interested in looking good than actually doing the hard work. They had put all their faith in her, and now it was backfiring. My mom let out a shaky breath. Things haven't been going as planned, she admitted. And we need help. I laughed. I couldn't help it. After everything, after throwing me out, cutting me off, letting Claire walk all over me, now they wanted my help. The audacity was unreal. Unbelievable, I muttered under my breath. What's so funny? My mom asked, sounding genuinely confused, like she couldn't understand why I wasn't jumping at the chance to swoop in and save the day. You're serious? You actually think I'm going to help you? I said, my voice rising. I could feel the anger bubbling up, all the emotions I'd been pushing down for the past 2 years coming to the surface. We're your parents, she said, her voice wavering. We made mistakes, but we need you. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. You didn't just make mistakes, Mom. You kicked me out of the house. You believed Claire's lies over your own son. You haven't spoken to me in years, and now you need money, and suddenly I'm supposed to drop everything and come running? She was quiet after that. I could tell she didn't know what to say. She probably wasn't used to me standing up for myself like this. Back when I was still living at home, I would have just gone along with whatever they said, hoping it would keep the peace. But not anymore. I had changed, and I wasn't going to let them walk all over me again. Finally, she spoke. But her tone had changed. She wasn't trying to be soft and caring anymore. Now she sounded irritated, like she couldn't believe I was being so difficult. We're still your family, she said sharply. You owe us at least that much. That was it. The final straw. I didn't owe them anything. In fact, they were the ones who owed me, an apology for starters, but I wasn't holding my breath. I don't owe you a damn thing, I said, my voice cold. If you need help, go ask Claire. She's your golden child, remember? Without waiting for her to respond, I hung up the phone. My heart was pounding and my hands were shaking, but I felt a strange sense of relief. I had finally said what I needed to say. They could figure out their mess on their own. I wasn't going to be part of it. That night, I called Aunt Denise and told her what happened. She wasn't surprised at all. They'd been relying on Claire for years, she said. It was only a matter of time before it all caught up to them. We talked for a while, and by the end of the call I felt even more certain that I'd made the right decision. My parents had chosen Claire over me, and now they were paying the price. As harsh as it sounded, it wasn't my responsibility to fix their mistakes. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I didn't need their approval or their acceptance. I had my own life now, and I wasn't about to let them drag me back into their toxic mess. I had done my part by surviving their betrayal. Now it was their turn to deal with the consequences. Update 1. I thought I was done with all the family drama after that phone call with my mom. Honestly, I felt pretty good about how things went. I had finally stood up for myself and made it clear that I wasn't going to be their safety net. I figured they'd just give up and go back to depending on Claire, but I underestimated my sister's ability to stir the pot, because of course Claire wasn't going to let me get away that easily. It was about 2 weeks after the call with my mom when something weird happened. I was having a pretty normal Saturday afternoon just cleaning up around my place when I heard a knock on the door. Now, I don't really get visitors. I live alone, and most of my friends know to text before they come over, so I was a little confused. I peeked through the peephole, and guess who was standing outside? Yep, Claire. For a second I thought maybe I was seeing things. What was she doing here? She hadn't spoken to me in years except for that one stupid text about my laptop, and now she was just showing up at my door like everything was fine. My gut reaction was to ignore her, but I knew Claire well enough to know that she wouldn't leave until she got what she wanted. I opened the door, and before I could even say anything, she smiled like we were best friends or something. Hey, she said, all bubbly and fake. It's been a while. I just stared at her for a second, completely caught off guard. Yeah, it has. What are you doing here, Claire? She looked at me with this overly sweet expression, like she thought she could charm her way into my good graces. I wanted to talk, she said, tilting her head slightly. Can I come in? I crossed my arms, not moving from the doorway. About what? I asked, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. Her smile faltered for a second, but she recovered quickly. Come on, can we just talk inside? It's important. I should have said no. I should have just told her to leave right then and there. But my curiosity got the better of me. I stepped aside and let her in, though I didn't bother making her feel welcome. I didn't offer her a seat, and I didn't ask if she wanted anything to drink. She was lucky I was even letting her into my space after everything she'd done. She walked in and looked around like she was taking in the place. Nice apartment, she said, trying to make small talk. I didn't respond. I wasn't here for pleasantries. Okay, Claire, I said, getting straight to the point. What do you want? She sighed dramatically, like she was already exhausted from whatever game she was playing. Mom told me about your conversation, she said, folding her arms. She's pretty upset, you know. I raised an eyebrow. Upset? She kicked me out of the house, Claire. What exactly does she have to be upset about? Claire rolled her eyes like I was the one being unreasonable. Look, I'm not here to rehash all that. We both know you've always been difficult. I almost laughed at how casually she said that. Difficult, I repeated. Are you serious right now? You fabricated emails to get me kicked out of the house. That's difficult? She waved her hand dismissively. That's ancient history. I came here because I want to make things right. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. You want to make things right? I asked, skepticism dripping from every word. Yeah, she said, nodding like this was the most reasonable thing in the world. I know things got complicated with the family, and maybe I overreacted back then, but I think it's time to put all that behind us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You think you overreacted? I said, struggling to keep my voice even. Claire, you destroyed my relationship with our parents. You lied about me, manipulated them, and now you're standing here like none of that matters anymore. Her smile faded a little, and I could see she was getting frustrated. I didn't come here to argue, okay? I came because I need your help. Ah, there it was. The real reason she was standing in my apartment. Of course, Claire wasn't here to apologize or make amends. She needed something from me. I felt my jaw clench as I stared at her, waiting for her to continue. I've been trying to keep the business going, she said, finally dropping the fake sweetness. But it's been really hard. The pandemic hit us pretty badly, and I'm doing everything I can. But it's not enough. Mom and Dad don't want to admit it, but we're on the verge of losing everything. I crossed my arms, not feeling an ounce of sympathy. So let me guess. You want me to help bail you out? Claire shifted uncomfortably. I'm not asking for a handout, she said defensively. I just thought we could, I don't know, figure something out together. You're doing well for yourself, right? I figured you'd want to help the family. I couldn't believe her. She was trying to guilt-trip me into saving the family business that she had driven into the ground. You figured wrong, I said flatly. Claire blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Wait, what do you mean? I mean, I'm not helping you, I said, my voice firm. Not after everything you did. You ruined my life, Claire. You turned my own parents against me. And now that you're in trouble, you think I'm just going to forget all of that and swoop in to save you? No! She stared at me, dumbfounded. For the first time in her life, Claire didn't seem to know what to say. But we're family, she said weakly, her voice losing some of its confidence. I shook my head. We stopped being family the day you made it your mission to destroy me. Claire's face went pale. She wasn't used to hearing no, and I could tell she was struggling to process it. After a long, awkward silence, she stood up. Fine, she said coldly. If that's how you want it. That's how it's going to be, I said, standing my ground. You made your choices, Claire. Now you have to deal with the consequences. Without another word, she stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a minute, letting the tension drain out of me. Part of me felt bad, like maybe I was too harsh, but then I remembered everything she'd put me through, and that guilt faded fast. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life. I wasn't living in Claire's shadow anymore. I wasn't the second choice or the scapegoat. I was finally free from all of it. Update 2. I thought that after Claire stormed out of my apartment, things would finally go quiet, like she would get the message that I was done with her and the whole family drama. But of course, I underestimated just how stubborn she could be. It wasn't even a full week later when the next wave hit. And this time it wasn't Claire knocking on my door. It was both my parents. It was a Saturday again. Funny how these things always seem to happen on my days off. I was just sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone when the knock came. It wasn't soft either. It was one of those heavy, insistent knocks that tells you whoever's on the other side isn't leaving anytime soon. I got up, already having a bad feeling about who it might be. When I opened the door, there they were. My mom and dad standing together like some kind of united front. My dad looked uncomfortable, like he didn't really want to be there. But my mom had that look in her eye, the one that said she was determined to fix whatever mess had been made, even if it meant bulldozing her way through. I sighed, leaning against the doorframe. What do you want? My mom gave me a strained smile, trying to keep things friendly, I guess. Can we come in and talk? We need to sort some things out. I was tempted to slam the door in their faces, but part of me figured that if I didn't let them in now, they'd just keep showing up. So with an exaggerated sigh, I stepped aside and let them in. They walked in, glancing around the place like they were expecting something more than a basic apartment. My dad stayed quiet, but my mom went straight for the couch, sitting down and patting the seat next to her like I was some little kid she was trying to console. I'll stand, I said flatly, crossing my arms. All right, she said with a tight smile. Look, We know things have been difficult between us. Difficult, I repeated, raising an eyebrow. That's what you're calling it? My dad finally spoke up, his voice low and gruff. We didn't come here to argue. Then what did you come here for? I asked, not even bothering to hide my frustration. Because I'm pretty sure we've already been over everything. Claire tried, you tried, and I made myself clear. I'm not helping. My mom's smile wavered a little. She probably wasn't used to me talking back like this. That's not why we're here, she said, leaning forward slightly. We're here because we want to apologize. I almost laughed. Apologize for what exactly? Kicking me out, believing Claire's lies? Or that you didn't even bother checking in on me for 2 years? My mom's face tightened, and my dad shifted uncomfortably, looking like he wanted to be anywhere but here. It was clear they weren't, expecting me to throw it back in their faces like that. We know we made mistakes, my mom said, her voice quieter now. But we're family, and family has to stick together. I could feel my patience wearing thin. This was just more of the same. Every time something went wrong, they'd pull out the family card like it was supposed to erase everything that happened. But I wasn't falling for it this time. You guys are only here because you need something from me, I said bluntly. If things hadn't gone south with the business, I wouldn't even be hearing from you. Let's not pretend this is about family. There was a moment of silence, and then my dad finally spoke up, his voice rough but more honest than anything I'd heard from him in years. You're right. That caught me off guard. I blinked, staring at him. What? You're right, he repeated, sighing heavily. We screwed up. We believed Claire. We pushed you out, and we didn't even think twice about it. And now things are falling apart, and we're desperate. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't expecting him to actually admit it. My mom, on the other hand, looked like she was trying not to lose her cool. Clearly, she hadn't planned for him to just lay it all out like that. I appreciate the honesty, I said after a long pause, but that doesn't change anything. My mom cut in then, her voice sharper. It doesn't change the fact that we need you, and you owe us after everything we've done for you. And there it was again, that sense of entitlement. They really believed I owed them something just because they were my parents, like all the years of neglect and favoritism didn't matter, and now that they were in trouble, I was supposed to bail them out. I don't owe you anything, I said, my voice cold. Not after the way you treated me. You made your choice when you believed Claire over me, when you threw me out and didn't even check if I was okay. Now you want me to save you? That's not how this works. My dad didn't say anything. He just sat there, staring at the floor like he was ashamed. But my mom wasn't done yet. We're your parents, she said, her voice rising. We raised you. We took care of you, and now you're just going to abandon us? I shook my head, almost feeling sorry for her at this point. You didn't take care of me. Aunt Denise did. You chose Claire, and now you're stuck with her. That's on you. My mom looked like she was about to explode, but my dad put a hand on her arm, stopping her from saying whatever was about to come out. He stood up, looking me in the eye for the first time since they walked in. We understand, he said, his voice steady but sad. We're not going to push you anymore. We just needed to try. For a second, I almost felt bad for him, but then I remembered everything they had put me through, and that sympathy disappeared. I hope you figure it out, I said, stepping toward the door and opening it for them. But I'm not going to be part of it. My dad nodded, like he'd expected that. My mom, though, gave me one last look, half angry, half pleading. But when she saw I wasn't budging, she stood up and followed him out. As they left, I closed the door behind them and stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle in. I'd done it. I had finally stood up to them, and for the first time it felt like I was really free.